At this time, I would like to introduce the Archbishop of Cincinnati, Archbishop Schnurr.
Thank you, Father Benedict. And to everyone this evening, thank you for being here. Your presence witnesses to the steadfast support that you give to Mount St. Mary's Seminary of the West and the Athenaeum of Ohio. And we are extremely grateful that we can count on you. These are exciting and encouraging times for the Church, and your support and engagement has helped the Archdiocese to reap the benefits. At Mount St. Mary's Seminary, for example, as Father Benedict has already mentioned, our enrollment is at a 33-year high. And as Father Benedict also indicated, the projection is that the enrollment will continue to increase. Then just last Saturday, I ordained 18 men to the permanent diaconate, and their ministry will be a real blessing to this archdiocese. Additionally, through funding received from our capital campaign, One Faith, One Hope, One Love, we hope to offer tuition assistance and help grow our lay ministry programs. For all of this, I am grateful to you, our benefactors and friends. I am grateful as well to the faculty and staff of the seminary and the Athenaeum for their dedication and commitment. In a very particular way, I am grateful to Father Benedict, the rector and president, for his hard work in shepherding both institutions. Ultimately, of course, we thank God for blessing us, helping us to grow, and leading us forward. This evening, it is a privilege for me to introduce our guest of honor, His Eminence Cardinal Wuerl, the Archbishop of Washington. Your Eminence, welcome to the Archdiocese of Cincinnati, and thank you for accepting our invitation. We have looked forward to this evening, and many are the times in the recent days that people have told me that they follow your public appearances and greatly appreciate your thorough and articulate explanation of the faith and statements on issues of interest to the Catholic Church. Cardinal Wuerl was ordained to the priesthood for the Diocese of Pittsburgh in December 1966. In December 1985, he was appointed the Auxiliary Bishop of Seattle and ordained a bishop by Pope St. John Paul II in St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. He served as Auxiliary Bishop of Seattle until 1987 and then became the Bishop of Pittsburgh, where he served for 18 years until his appointment as the Archbishop of Washington in 2006. He was elevated to the College of Cardinals in 2010 by Pope Benedict XVI. The Cardinal serves as a member of dozens of national and international governing bodies, including those of the Vatican Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith and the Congregation for Bishops. He's referred to as one of the world's most influential bishops by the Washington Post. As the Archbishop of Washington, he has hosted Pope Francis in 2015 and Pope Benedict in 2008 during their first pastoral visits to the United States. He also participated in the conclave that elected Pope Francis. Pope Benedict appointed him to help direct the Synod of Bishops on the new evangelization, and Pope Francis appointed him as a member of the Synods on the Family. Finally, we are very proud to note that Cardinal Wuerl has an important link to the Athenaeum of Ohio. He attended 2 years of college seminary at St. Gregory's Seminary from 1958 to 1960, and Your Eminence, the rector assures me that we still have your transcripts on file. Please join me in welcoming Cardinal Wuerl.
Archbishop, thank you very, very much. I thought that the policy for clearing out files from time to time might have saved me that embarrassment. Before beginning these few reflections, I want to thank Archbishop Schnurr for his gracious introduction and for inviting me to be here this evening. I have known your Archbishop for many years, particularly when he served as the General Secretary for the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, and I was truly delighted to get the invitation to be here. It is a joy to return to Cincinnati, where, as you just learned, 58 years ago, I was very young. I began my studies at the college-level seminary, the division that was called St. Gregory the Great Seminary. And I still have wonderful and fond memories of those years and of some of the extraordinary professors. And in fact, I was so pleased when I arrived. Father Ben was kind enough to take me to see the old, now redone amphitheater where we used to put on the Shakespeare play. Over 10 years ago, I came back to this campus, this time as part of a visitation team that did a study of the seminary and simply confirmed that it was doing a very, very good job in the formation of priests. And I can't tell you what a joy it was to walk through that seminary today, and particularly to be in the chapel to meet the seminarians and see how many there are. What a great sign for the future of this archdiocese, isn't it? What we celebrate tonight, though, is not just the program of priestly formation, but also, I'm informed, the program for the formation of permanent deacons and also the Institute for the formation of lay parish ministry. What I want to touch on briefly tonight is something that you already know and you already appreciate. That's why this whole hall is filled with so many of you. The importance of all of the formation, priestly formation, diaconate formation, formation of our lay ministers, all of that goes on at the Athenaeum, because it prepares the church to meet the needs of today and tomorrow. On a number of occasions when I have an opportunity to visit and to speak with groups, I'm asked, what exactly does the church bring? What does the church bring to our culture, our society, our moment in history today? That's a very important question, and one of the reasons why we have the Fenwick Society. In answer to that, a number of years ago, I was invited to speak at the Catholic Center at Harvard University. The program, the title of the program, and the reason for my talk was The Role of Faith in a Pluralistic Society. And at the conclusion of my presentation, there was a question and answer period, and a man who self-identified as an atheist and who taught in the School of Law was the first one to put his hand up. In fact, I had just finished, began to breathe a little easier when this hand went up, and the moderator said to me, Eminence, he is a lawyer. He claims to be an atheist. And I said, well, he has his hand up. And so I said, yes, what is your question? And he said, what do you think you people bring to our society? Now, the you people wasn't directed just at me. This was an ecumenical interfaith gathering, and so the front row was filled with people in various shapes and forms of Roman collars. And so we were the you people. Now, since he was a lawyer, And I was always told that lawyers never ask a question, the answer to which they don't already know. I said to him, would you mind if I began to answer your question by asking you a question? And he said, no, go right ahead. And I asked him, what do you think our world would be like if it weren't for all the voices of all of those religious traditions and the Catholic Church represented here in this hall? What would it be like if we never heard from the time we were little children, you shall not kill, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness? What would it be like? What would our culture be like? What would our society be like? What would this city be like if we hadn't heard the religious imperative such as love your neighbor as yourself? Do unto others as you would have them do to you. Remember, our Holy Father said that at his address to the joint session of Congress, and Congress responded, completing the phrase. How much more harsh would this world be if we hadn't grown up hearing things like, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, blessed are the merciful, blessed are the peacemakers? And what would the world be like if we never heard or were reminded that someday we're going to be asked to give a rendering of our lives? And to his credit, he responded, it would be a mess. And it would. What the church brings to our world, what the church brings to our culture, what the church brings to our time is what it has always brought for 2,000 years. An encounter with Jesus Christ, an invitation to faith, and a call to a whole way of life. And this dynamic hasn't changed since the days that Jesus preached and gathered followers and began what was in effect the first formation program with his 12 apostles. And we all remember Simon Peter's answer to Jesus when Jesus said, in effect, in answer to the question, what do you people bring to our society, our culture? When Jesus said to Peter, do you too intend to walk away? And Peter responded, where would we go? Where would we go? You have the words of everlasting life. Today that option is a part of what we confront in every single moment. But today, all of the efforts to be able to continue to be present, continue to offer that encounter with Christ, that invitation to faith, that invitation to walk in the way of the Lord is part of what we're all about. Pope Benedict, in his visit to our country 8 years ago, said, before you can begin to answer the question, what do we bring and how do we bring it, you have to realize what it is we're dealing with. What's the background? What is the culture and society to which we bring the good news? And he told us, and this is something he repeated in the 2012 Synod on the New Evangelization, he said, at the heart of the challenge to the gospel today is a whole culture that is profoundly secular. The translation of that is a culture where the idea of anything beyond the immediacy, anything beyond what you can touch and feel and hear isn't real. And you and I know that there's a whole spiritual dimension to life, a whole spiritual quality to our existence that can't be reduced. But the Holy Father tells us this secularism, and we talked about it in the Synod on the New Evangelization, it's like a tsunami. It's washed across all of our culture. And it's taken with it, when it receded, all of those values that you and I simply took for granted: family, marriage, right, wrong, objective truth. And that's the world today in which we're called to bring the encounter with Jesus Christ, to bring a rehearing of the gospel. But the Pope said there are a couple other problems as well. There's the materialism, the lack of an understanding that beyond what we can feel and touch, there's also the realm of God's grace. And he said the individualism that's focused so much on just me, and it doesn't get beyond that. And the relativism that says, really, there isn't anything objective out there. It's whatever I decide is right and wrong. Pope Francis has noted the same situation. That's why he called two synods. He called the synod in 2014 and 2015 to talk about what do we do and how do we support family life, marriage and family life today. He just published a beautiful post-synodal apostolic exhortation called The Joy of Love, Amoris Laetitia. First, though, Pope Francis reminds us the great apostolic tradition of which we're a part, why we have a seminary, why we ordain priests, why we have bishops, the great apostolic tradition, that great succession, is the reason we can feel so comfortable about the call of the church to renew our Christian commitment, renew family life, renew marriage. Sometimes, though, something like apostolic succession, apostolic tradition sounds a little bit theoretical. You know, children have a way of going right to the core of things. I'm always amazed when I visit a parish and talk to young kids. You know, the Archbishop will, I'm sure, verify this. Every time you go to a parish, especially a school, you get lots of letters. They're not spontaneous. They come in neat packets, and you can always tell the grade by the writing instrument. If it's a crayon, you know you're dealing with first grade. But as you move up the line, it goes from crayon to colored pencil to the ubiquitous number 2 pencil. And then when you get to the ballpoint pen, you know you're about 8th grade. One of the letters, though, that I received going to a parish for a visit to the school, I've kept this letter for 18 years because it says everything that needs to be said. It was written by little Dominic in the 4th grade. And it said, "Dear Bishop, I find it amazing." Now you know it's an authentic letter. I find it amazing that you know somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody. Now, obviously, the teacher said, "Look, you're writing to the bishop, fill up the page." So he did. Who knew somebody who knew Jesus. And I said to myself, when I get to that school, not only am I going to thank little Dominic for his letter, I'm going to appoint him to the Archdiocesan Theological Commission. Isn't that what we believe? Isn't that why we're here? Isn't that why we have a seminary? We believe we know somebody who knew Jesus. That's the whole tradition, apostolic tradition of the church. And that's why there is a Bishop Fenwick Society. That's what you're all about. It recognizes that the future well-being and strength of this archdiocese rests with the preparation of future priests and deacons and lay ministers, all who will carry on that great living tradition and invite the next generation into that encounter with Christ, an opportunity to hear the gospel and a challenge to live it. That's what we're all about. That's what you're all about. And that's what makes this evening such a wonderful time. The simple introduction to the next generation of the good news. Christ is risen. We share that new life. And because of that, there is a whole distinct Catholic way of living. And this is what Pope Francis is talking about in his new post-synodal apostolic exhortation, Amoris Laetitia. He reminds us of the richness of our Catholic faith, of the depths of its mooring in sacred scripture, of the received tradition that we're a part of, and the need to be alert to that tradition and see that it's passed on. It's passed on now. This is our moment. This is our time to do that. Pope Francis approaches his teaching ministry first and foremost, though, as a pastor. All you have to do is read that, and I hope you'll all find a copy of that beautiful, beautiful exhortation and read it. It's long, but he says so at the beginning. He says, it's long, yes, but I have a lot to say. But it's worth taking the time to read, because when you read it, you're really hearing the voice of a pastor. I said to my priest when we had a gathering to take a look at this, I said, parts of this, after you've read the paragraph, close your eyes and just envision the Pope saying that to you. And it's true for all of us. His pastoral mission, he says, however, is focused on 4 activities that I'm going to touch on very, very briefly. Today, he says, what the church needs as we move into this culture, this very secular culture, this very material culture, this culture that isn't attuned to the gospel. He said what we need to do in reaching out even to our own people who may be struggling with the faith. We need to be listening, accompanying, discerning, and evangelizing. We can hear him saying, as he did in his first talk to the church, we need to go out, we need to meet, we need to encounter, and we need to accompany people. We need to be with them in this journey that brings all of us a little closer to the Lord. He understands listening to include listening to the whole church and hearing what are the issues we're dealing with, what are the struggles. The church has this vast reservoir of spiritual life, of response, of teaching, of wisdom. But we have to listen to what are the issues people are struggling with today. And the fruit of this listening is reflected in that document, in all of the references he makes to what the church has said for over 2,000 years and what all the bishops who gathered for 2 years spoke about. But the second activity is to focus on accompanying. This pastoral accompaniment is simply being there for people who are struggling with the faith, who are struggling with the church's teaching, who are trying with all of the condition they're in to do the best they can. And our Holy Father says, this requires the formation of priests, deacons, lay ministers who know deeply and profoundly the faith and are prepared to speak it and explain it in language that everyone can understand today. I think that's one of the great elements of appreciation of our Holy Father, that he speaks He speaks in a way that people can understand him. A couple of months ago, I was in Rome. I got into a cab to go over to my titular church, and as I got into the cab, the driver said to me, "Hey, Father, have you met this Pope?" And I said, "Yes." Now, those of you who have been to Italy know that in Italy, you can, if you're a cab driver, you can drive a car right into the traffic and still turn around and talk to the person. And so my cab driver explained to me that the reason he likes this Pope is because he speaks in language that we can all understand. And then, as if to add some salt to the wound, he turned around and said, "Not like you people." I thought to myself, there goes your tip. But the point is, our Holy Father speaks in a way that people who have drifted away feel invited back. And we're hearing that and seeing that all over the country. And that's what he's asking us to do. And that's what the Athenaeum of Ohio, that's what Mount St. Mary's does. That's what the priestly formation, the diaconal formation, and the lay ministry formation does. Helping people to know so deeply the faith and to know so deeply the roots of that faith that they can speak it clearly, very, very invitingly. This is what this evening is all about, and why I think we can be so grateful. Then the Pope goes on to say, after you've done the inviting, after you've done the listening, after you've done the accompanying, what you're really doing is evangelizing, inviting people back to the full, rich life of the church. Once again, so much of it has to do with simply being that voice of the love of God in a way that people can hear it. I was waiting at the carousel, the luggage carousel, for my bag after one of these long trips to Rome. And a woman came up to me and she said, "Cardinal, I was on that flight with you." And she said, "I guess I should confess, I'm a fallen away Catholic." And I said, "Well, between this moment and the time your bag comes up, tell me about it." And she said, "Well, I should tell you that I started going back to church because listening to Pope Francis, he's so inviting. He makes me realize it's not all my fault." And I thought, St. Paul said the same thing. St. Paul said, "Why is it that the things I don't want to do, I do, and the things I want to do, I don't do?" But she said, because he keeps saying, keep trying, keep with us. She said, I started back to Mass. And then her bag came up and she said, "Well, thank you." And I said to her, "The next time you introduce yourself, why don't you say, I'm a former ex-Catholic?" Isn't that what we're doing? Isn't that what the Bishop Fenwick Society is all about? Helping the next generation, priest, deacon, and lay minister, be prepared to do everything the church has done for 2,000 years. Bring the encounter with Jesus Christ to people. Bring the message of our faith, the beauty of the gospel, the wonder of the Christian way of faith and life to other people. Congratulations to you for what you have accomplished. All you have to do is look around this room and see the success of this effort. May God bless the Bishop Fenwick Society, who makes it possible for your Archbishop and for this archdiocese to say, here we do our best to answer that question. What does the church bring to our age, our culture, our society? My brothers and sisters, what the Fenwick Society does, what it brings, what this archdiocese brings, what the Athenaeum of Ohio brings, is that one simple answer. We bring Jesus Christ. Thank you.